time to do our last plants lesson. Well, I say lesson, it's really lessons. If this was in school, this would be 2 or 3 lessons, probably at least 2 lessons, and they'd at least be a couple of hours long. So we need to take our time with this, really do it properly, and when we do the tasks, you'll have a few days to do each. I really want you to think about it, plan it, and write quite a lot of really good work. Okay, so today we're going to investigate fruit. We've got to decide what is fruit, how is it different from a vegetable, how are they formed, and what are they for. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I thought I had a very good idea of what fruit and vegetable was. I thought a fruit was a nice, sweet thing that you normally had in puddings or as snacks, and vegetables were savoury things that could also be tasty but were normally in meals, and you tended to have them as sides and chopped up in spaghetti bolognese and that sort of thing. Turns out I was wrong. So, we need to work out what they actually are according to science. Now, we need to link this back to some of our previous lessons. So our first lesson needs to be what were the different types of a plant, because that tells us what vegetables are. So, let me get my draw tool up. I'll give you a few seconds, pause this if you need to. Can you work out where those labels go on this diagram? Right, you all paused it and had a go? Okay, so it's quite easy because I put them in order. The flower is that bit. The stem is the bit that holds everything up. The leaf are the green leafy bits. The root is down here. And the tubers, which we might not have talked about before, are bits on the roots that aren't actually roots. They're a type of stem that stores stuff for the plant for later. Now, if it's one of those, if what we're eating used to be one of those parts of a plant, then it's a vegetable. So if it is a flower and we eat it, it's a vegetable. If it's a stem and we eat it, it's a vegetable. If it's a leaf and we eat it, it's a vegetable. If it's a root and we eat it, it's a vegetable. And if it's a tuber and we eat it, it's a vegetable. Now, it's not always not always easy to tell what things were. So let's have a look at that now. So here I've got some vegetables that we often eat. They're either going to be a flower, a leaf, a stem, a root, or a tuber. Now, if you remember the lesson on roots, you can remember there were different types of roots, but often a root system would have that big tap root in the middle, and that's normally what we're talking about when we talk about roots. So, I'll give you a few seconds, pause it if you want to. Can you work out what all those pictures are that I've put on the right, and did they used to be a flower, a leaf, a stem, a root, or a tuber? Right, hopefully you had a go at that, paused it and played it. Let's see if I can move these things around. So, the first one here, these are asparagus. What are they? Well, they're the stem of a plant. So they can go there. Oh, slide my iPad. What else have we got here? Well, this one here, that's lettuce. Lettuce is leaves. So it goes there. It's the leaf of a plant. A carrot. Oh, didn't mean to do that. A carrot. That's the root. It's a root vegetable. It's a tap root off of a carrot plant. What have we got next? We have got a potato. A potato is actually the tuber off of the root system. The broccoli. Broccoli is actually a flower off of a plant. Cauliflower. Oh, it's gone back again. Cauliflower is also the flower off of a plant. A sweet potato, it's getting annoying. sweet potato isn't like a potato, a tuber, it's actually a root. Oh, what are these ones called? Radishes. A radish is a root. What are those ones called? Brussels sprouts, that's it. Brussels sprouts are actually a leaf, and spinach is a leaf. Now, there are certain vegetables that I did not put on there because they can be a bit confusing. I found out today that celery, which I always thought was the stem of a plant, isn't. It's a special type of leaf. But that's confusing, so I've not put it on there. Onions and bulbs like that are actually a modified type of leaf. But again, I'm not going to go too much into that today. So, basically, if it's part of a plant, it's probably a vegetable. Unless, and this is where we need to look at fruit. Fruit are the bit of the plant that came from a flower. Now, I know I just said that a flower is a vegetable. If it's still a flower when you eat it, like cauliflower and broccoli and asparagus, then it's a vegetable. But the whole point of a flower is it needs to make new plants, and to do that it has to turn into something else first. What it turns into is a fruit. So, we need to go back to our parts of the flower lesson. Here's a diagram of a flower, and here's some labels. Pause the video. Can you work out which labels go with which bits of the flower? Oops, sorry. Okay, I'm assuming you've paused that and had a go. So, the stem is a bit down here that holds it up. The sepal is those funny little leaves at the bottom. Ovary, this bit here. The anther and filaments, these bits down here, they are the stamen, the ovule in the middle here, style there, stigma there. Let's draw that arrow a bit better there. Okay. Those were the bits of the fruit. The bits of the flower, the bit that we're going to concentrate on is the ovule and the ovary. Now, we've got petals. So the petal encourages the insect to come over. The stamen bits give it the pollen that it needs to get to the stigma of another plant that goes down the style and ends up in the ovary and ends up at the ovule. Now, once that bit's done, the plant doesn't actually need any of the bits around the outside anymore. All it needs is the ovary and the ovule, and those are the bits that are going to change. They're the bits that become the fruit. The ovule turns into the seeds in the middle of the fruit. The ovary changes and becomes the actual body of the fruit itself. So, if we look at this example, it's an apple. You can see in the middle of an apple how those sepal, those little, can I draw on this? Yep. These little leafy bits at the bottom, whoops, have become those leafy bits there on the apple, which is a bit weird because they're at the top. I don't know how that's happened. The ovule has become these seeds inside, while the ovary itself has swelled up and has become the main bit of the apple, the bit that we actually like eating. Now, if you look really closely, you can still kind of make out the shapes. You can make out these lines of where it used to be something different. And then we've got this pedicellized bit of the stalk that's left here. Okay. Now, earlier I said in my head fruit is the nice, sweet, tasty stuff. And it kind of is true a lot of the time, because the whole point of this is the plant's gone to all this trouble, it's made a seed, it's covered it in a fruit, but it's not going to do a lot of use if it just stays with that plant. It needs to get somewhere else, get to the soil somewhere else, so it can grow into a new plant. And the way a lot of plants want to do that is they want animals to help. The fruit has to be tasty and interesting. It's generally bright colours, smells nice, and is nice and sweet, because most animals like nice, bright, nice smelling things that taste nice and sweet. The plant wants people to take this piece of fruit, take it somewhere else, and eat it. Because what we tend to do when we eat it is either we only eat the outside, and then we drop the middle bit onto the ground, or the animal does, where it then gets to the ground, and, oh, that's really good, it can grow into a new plant. Or some animals will eat the entire fruit, the whole thing whole, including the seed, and then they'll just poo it out somewhere else. Either way, that seed got somewhere else a long way away from the plant that it started with, so it can grow up and not steal all the sunlight and all of the nutrients and water from its parent plant. So, fruit, they're a brilliant idea. They're good for the plant, and luckily they're good for us too. Before I go any further, that is not a fruit. That is not a vegetable. That is a fungus. Mushrooms are not fruit or vegetables, so they are not part of this lesson. They're not part of this investigation. I will go back to fruit and say lots of fruit are sweet and lots of fruit are bright, because the animals that the plant wants to work with, the animals that the plant wants to move their seeds around, like bright and sweet things. Not all fruit is bright and sweet, because not all animals like bright and sweet things. There are some really stinky fruit that appeal to bats. There's a particular desert melon that wouldn't really appeal to us, but aardvarks love it. So, depending on the animal, depends on what the fruit ends up looking like. So, if we're just going to clarify this quickly, any part of a plant that we eat is a vegetable: flowers, stems, leaves, roots, tubers, unless it used to be a flower and the flower has now grown into something else, and that counts as a fruit. We can tell it's a fruit because it's still got the seeds inside it that used to be the ovule. So if it's got seeds in it, it's probably a fruit. If it doesn't have seeds in it, it's a vegetable. You just have to work out which bit of the plant it was to work out which type of vegetable. If it's a mushroom, it's not a vegetable, it's a fungus. Still good for you, but different. So, I'm going to give you 2 tasks, 2 pieces of work that I want you to do, both of which should take a reasonably large amount of time, partly because you've got to get things together. Now, task 1, examining fruits. For this, you need to find a range of fruits, not vegetables. We talked about vegetables to show how they aren't fruit, but for this lesson, we're thinking about fruits. So you can get apples and pears and strawberries and peppers and tomatoes and peas and beans. If you're getting peas, they would still need to be in their pods, because the pea itself isn't actually a vegetable, it's the seed out of the middle of a vegetable. But, if you can't get those, don't worry, there's plenty of fruit that you can... Not vegetable, sorry. Fruit. The pea is not a fruit or a vegetable, it is a seed out of a fruit. So yeah, get your hands on some fruit. It shouldn't be too hard, because I'm sure we've all got lots of lovely fruit in our houses, but if not, I'm giving you a little while so that you can get some. You need to cut your fruit open. That might need an adult with a sharp knife to help. Please don't go grabbing knives out your kitchen drawers and hurting yourselves. Ask a grown-up for help. If you've got a magnifying glass, that can also help, although to be honest, most fruit's quite big. You can look at it, you'll be fine. So, then you need to do some work around that. You can take some photographs and stick them in your book, but more importantly, I'd like you to make drawings of what you see. Scientists often do detailed drawings, especially when they first find a new plant or animal. They will take photographs of it and they will draw it in detail. When you've drawn it, see if you can find certain bits. Can you find the seeds that used to be the ovule, the bit that makes it a fruit? Can you find the fleshy bit that used to be the ovary? So did I put flash there? Let's just change that. Ooh. Fleshy bit that used to be an ovary. Sometimes you can find the very remains of the sepal, those kind of leafy bits on the bottom, and sometimes you've still got the stem that it's joined to. Can you then start comparing them? So, does different fruit have different types of seeds in it? Are the seeds in different places in different fruit? You know, look at a banana. Where are the seeds in a banana? It's a very odd thing. Or about the cherry. Why are cherry seeds so very, very different? That's the bit that I want everybody to do. However, there is an optional extra. It's optional because it gets complicated fast, so only do this if you really, really want to and have the spare time. Can you find out what the different types of fruit are? There's about 12 different types, and it gets really, really complicated. So what you probably are best to do is just look at a few of them. So look at drupes, berries, nuts, legumes, and poms. Poms is a type of fruit, not just the French word for apple. So you'd have to look at that one specifically. I've chosen those because they're the ones that we tend to eat. You can find out what they are, but like I said, it gets complicated. If you do that, you can start finding out things like why is a tomato a berry but a strawberry is not a berry, and why is an almond not a nut? It's a type of, well, a different type of fruit. I'll leave that up to you. So that's an optional extra if you want it. I'm going to leave you a few days for that. I want it done really well. Task 2. This is pretty much the last main piece of work of this unit. It's an investigation. You need to plan an investigation. Now, if you were in school, you'd be getting into groups and you'd be discussing this with each other. I don't know if you've got a way of talking to each other. Perhaps some of you ring each other and have little friendship groups and you can discuss it. Brilliant. If not, perhaps you can discuss this with family members. Perhaps you can discuss it in the playtime group on Edmodo. Or perhaps you just can think it through for yourself, and that's absolutely fine. You need to pick one of these two questions and decide how you're going to investigate it. I'm not going to tell you how. I'm more bothered about how you learn to do this than actually what you find out. So the two possible questions are, does a certain type of fruit, so a Granny Smith apple or a grape or a pear, a certain type of pear, always have the same number of seeds? Does every Granny Smith apple have exactly the same number of seeds as every other Granny Smith apple? How could you find that out? Yeah, investigate it. Question 2, so this is an alternative, you don't do both questions, you pick one and do it. Is the number of seeds in a fruit related to how large a fruit is? So do all big fruit have lots of seeds in, or do all big fruit have a small number of seeds in? As the fruit gets smaller, does it get less seeds? I don't know. You need to investigate it. So to investigate, you're going to have to write out your question, so I know which one you're doing. You're going to have to then think, well, what do I need to actually do? What do I need to get? So list all the things that you're going to need to get. That could be the fruit itself, but also the tools that you might need. You might need knives and chopping boards and magnifying glasses or tweezers, or I don't know what you've got in your house and I don't know what you're going to need. Then you need to write out a method. What are you going to do? Now this is like instructions. We've just done instructions in English. It will be a step-by-step, in chronological order, in time order, numbered piece of work that tells me what you're going to do first, and then, and then, and then, and then, and then, and then. You might need diagrams to go with this. Sometimes a diagram is worth more than a paragraph of writing. Quite often a method is best if it's a simple sentence with a good picture. When you've investigated, you're going to have to write out your results. That might be a table if you're counting seeds in different fruits. It could be photographs of various different things you've done. It could be diagrams. It could be sentences, I don't know. Depends how you plan your investigation. And then finally, you need to write a conclusion. You need to tell me how what you've done answers that question. What do you now think about that question? And the answer might be, there's something else you still need to do. There might be more that you need to investigate, and that's a fine part of a conclusion. Now, as I said before, how you plan this and how you present this is more important than the actual answers. So again, this needs to take time. This is a good page or two's piece of writing, piece of work, and if this was in school, you would have hours to do it. You'd probably have a couple of hours lesson to plan this, and then you'd also have a lesson to carry it out. So take your time, don't rush it, hand it in when it's ready. I'll probably give you at least a week to do this, partly because you might need to order or buy some fruit. Okay? Right, have fun with this, good luck, and as always, if there's any questions, just ask.